This video is brought to you by Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket has just released a brand new YJack Mano dual port manometer wireless probe that goes with all of your other YJack probes. Find out more at yellowjacket.com. Since we're coming up into heating season, everyone knows how dangerous CO can be, especially our northern friends who work on a lot of gas furnaces and other types of fuel burning furnaces. You know how dangerous CO can be. It's very important for customers and anybody out there to have a CO detector in your home. You need to have that first line of defense that's going to beep and flash to let you know when to get out of the house so you don't become sick or worse. But how good is the CO detector you get from the store? In this segment, I'm going to talk about CO detectors you might see online and do they do the job they need to do? Because many times we slap something on the wall and say it's good, we're done. They're completely protected when they're not completely protected. And this will actually come back to using a combustion analyzer as well. We're not going to talk about that in this video, but in an upcoming video, we can talk about should you be using a combustion analyzer on 100% of your fuel burning appliance calls? I'm starting to come around to the yes category, but some of you might disagree, which is fine. That's why we have a comment section for spirited debate. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go to Amazon because I don't know why Amazon's what we've been using, but it's a website that almost every single person in our country is familiar with. We're going to take a look at a CO detector that pops up right at the top of the charts, and we're going to see how good it actually is at protecting people from the dangers of carbon monoxide. This is a what I call kitty carbon monoxide detector. It says battery powered with LED lights, CO alarm. This is a Black Friday deal. Today's actually Black Friday when I'm recording this. And for one of these, you can get it for $15.90. So incredibly affordable, thus being very appealing out there to people who want to be protected, have something up, but not spend a whole lot of money. So here it is. So this kitty carbon monoxide detector, does it actually do the job that you need it to do? Well, first, let's go to a chart that's going to show us what the effects of carbon monoxide are. So let's go to the chart here. This is out of a university paper, Preventing Carbon Monoxide Poisoning, and the university is Florida Atlantic University. I'm not very familiar with them, but they're using a chart that we all can recognize here. Health effects of carbon monoxide poisoning. There is an air concentration reading on the left side of this chart, health effects on the center of the chart, and on the right side, it tells you what action you need to take. For 0 to 2 parts per million, that's a normal outdoor ambient level, so no action is needed. If we go one more line down, it says less than 10 parts per million, health effects none, no action needed. Great, we're all good to go. But wait a second. When we get to 10 to 20 parts per million, fatigue in healthy people. So healthy people are having effects. Chest pain in people with heart disease. Now, if you are a person with heart disease or have a family or loved one with heart disease and they're having chest pain, that's going to pretty much ruin your day. You're going to want to take them into the hospital immediately. Now, in the actions category, it says investigate possible source of CO, repair when located. So it's saying that between 10 and 20 parts per million, you need to get on this. Okay, keep that in mind. So 10 to 20 is when we start having to take action. At 20 to 75 parts per million, it says impaired vision and concentration. Headaches, dizziness, confusion, nausea, symptoms can mimic the flu but clear up after leaving home. In the action category, investigate possible source of CO, repair when located, move all residents to fresh air. So now that we're at 20 to 75 parts per million, people are being evacuated out of the area that's going to be affected by this CO. 75 to 200 parts per million, angina, chest pain, impaired vision, reduced brain function. Read that one again. Reduced brain function. Get out of the house immediately. This is our action category. Call 911 from outside of the house. That's 75 to 200 parts per million. Greater than 400 parts per million. Health effects says can be fatal. So when you get to 400, you're in a very dangerous category. It says evacuate immediately. Call 911 from outside the house. So it's also telling you that although you need to call 911 on these, you have to be outside. So it's more important for you to evacuate immediately than stop to even call 911. That's very telling. At the bottom of this page, it says any reading over 10 ppm indicates that there is an unusual source of CO that needs to be investigated. And you guys might have a chart that looks similar to this, might be broken up a little bit more than this one, but this is a general chart. It's actually pretty good because it's more condensed than some of the charts that I've seen, but still highlights the very severe risk that CO poses. So now that we've seen this chart, let's go back and let's read about the kitty smoke alarm, which I think the page said, if I remember correctly, let me go back over here to Amazon. I think it said like one of the most popular ones on Amazon. It says Kitty, #1 most installed fire safety brand in North America. So that's a broad category, fire safety brand. Very nice literature here, tells you about carbon monoxide, product placement guide. So it really has this whole air of safety. Now, I read through here real quickly in the product description. I did not see the thresholds for this device as far as CO, but I decided to go to the website. And here's what I found on the website. I'm going to highlight this area for you guys. I've highlighted this area and it says per UL 2034 requirements. That's UL 2034. The CO sensor will not alarm at levels of CO below 30 parts per million and will alarm in the following time range when exposed to the corresponding levels of CO. 70 parts per million CO concentration, 60 to 240 minutes. 240 minutes is a long time. Now let's go back to the chart again. 60, 240 minutes for 70 parts per million. If we go back to the chart and we go down to 70 parts per million, what is it going to tell us? It's going to tell us that at 75 to 200 parts per million, angina, impaired vision, reduced brain function may result. When you have reduced brain function, you may not be in the best condition to execute an emergency plan. I think that's one of the major concerns, that once this thing alarms, you might be impaired to the degree that you won't be able to properly respond to the emergency. That would be a concern of mine just from reading this. I'm going to continue here. It says 150 parts per million CO concentration, 10 to 50 minutes. 400 parts per million CO concentration, 4 to 15 minutes. And remember, 400 says could be fatal. How long does it take for that to become fatal? Let's take a look at one more chart that breaks down a little bit more, but just remember, 4 to 15 minutes, let's say it's 15 minutes, let's max it out at 400 parts per million, and 50 minutes, almost 1 hour at 150 parts per million. So just keep that in your mind. This is a chart at gaslab.com. Goes from 0 parts per million all the way up to 12,800. So it goes a little bit farther. And this one can be downloaded, it says here. It says download a copy of the chart. So gaslab.com/blog/article/carbon monoxide levels chart is where you can find this. It's pretty easy to find these things by Google searching now. So if we go to 400 parts per million here, it's a UL 4-minute alarm is what it says. And you have physical symptoms within 1 to 2 hours, life-threatening in 3 hours. So it becomes life-threatening within 180 minutes. For 150 to 399 parts per million, it's a UL 10 to 15-minute alarm. 200 parts per million, physical symptoms after 2 to 3 hours. To me, if you're not alarming as soon as possible, you're going to find yourself into one of these areas. And I'm just going to assume, and I'm not saying anything negative about the Kitty carbon monoxide detector. It is what it is, and it doesn't say it's something different. But what I'm saying is the lower you get with that detection, the better off you're going to be. Because as a lot of you guys know, things tend to not work as good as they first work as time goes by. So as the sensor that reads CO, especially if you're reading a low level constantly, I would assume, and maybe that's just an assumption I shouldn't make, but it's an assumption I think is perfectly logical, that over time that sensor is going to wear out. So if you were to have a constant source of low level CO that maybe didn't cause much damage in your body, maybe it's 10 parts per million or less, where you can live with it and don't notice it much. But what if over time your sensor starts to wear out, and all of a sudden it goes up to 40 or 50 parts per million. It doesn't notice the difference. It doesn't trigger or alarm or anything like that. I would just be concerned. I'd want the most sensitive CO detector, whereas you might assume that the ones sold online are, but they're not very sensitive in the grand scheme of things. If you look at what happens, physical symptoms after 6 to 8 hours, 35 parts per million. These things aren't even triggering at 35 parts per million. So when you go to purchase the CO detector, make sure you're purchasing one that triggers as low as possible. Now, let's see if I can find an example of one that triggered very low. And I'm going to say right now that this is nothing where a particular CO detector company has said, hey, Zach, you want to make a video about the CO detector? I'm just finding what I can find on the internet that's readily available because I figured that's what people will do. This is the Defender LL6170 low-level carbon monoxide monitor/alarm. And as you can see, this one cost a whole lot more than the Kitty. And there's a reason for that. As you can see, if you can see the picture, podcast people, you can't see it, but that's okay because I'm going to tell you it has a part per million readout on the actual device. And I'm going to scroll down here. And for those of you who can't see, it's $199 instead of $15. It says ultra low level display time, 5 parts per million within 1 minute, 9 parts per million within 10 minutes, 25 parts per million within 2 minutes. So this thing is displaying a very low level of carbon monoxide right off the bat. And it's going to keep you more safe, in my opinion, than something that doesn't trigger until 70 parts per million. And just make a logic comparison, you guys. If something costs $200, you would like to think that it has a lot of quality. It's going to last longer. And when it's talking about safety, when we're talking about health and well-being of you and your other family members or people dwelling in your home, squatters, whatever, I would trust a higher level of product than a lower level of product. Lower level is going to cut features and corners potentially. That's not an indictment of Kitty. That's just my opinion of lower level products are going to save money somehow. They cost less for a reason. There's either features missing or quality missing. So in this particular instance, it might be worthwhile to think about having a higher quality, often with higher cost, unfortunately, product that's going to be more useful. What I think a lot of low-level CO detectors are just things people put on the wall, contractors put on the wall to satisfy a code requirement, or people just see stuff online and say, I'm looking for X, this says X, without investigating further about what it actually does. That's how these things end up on the wall, for better or for worse. So as a consumer, I think the responsibility is on you to take a look at it and say, does this do what I need it to do? It's pretty easy to find these charts. There is an overall understanding, I think, of CO in general. People understand it's bad and it can kill them. I think we should take this seriously. I think hopefully I've illuminated a little bit of how you should choose a CO detector and what they're capable of. And I hope you guys take this to heart this winter.